Arsenal's first injury crisis has started and their fans are all over the shop. Let's talk about their situation. North London derby round the corner. Let's start with Arsenal. No Odegaard, no Rice, no Calafiori, no Mikel Merino. Why are you smiling?
Oh, you know I'm...
Why are you smiling?
Why are you smiling? You've come here on a completely different energy today. As soon as you see Odegaard get injured, you've come on smoke.
No, I'm neutral. I'm bringing neutral. But you're a Man City fan.
Yeah.
You had an injury crisis last season. We spoke about this last year,
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
And Arsenal do actually have some problems.
Yeah, no, they really do. And I think we mentioned it a lot last season. They have been very lucky over the last 2 seasons, I'd say, with injuries to key players. Obviously, City had Haaland out for quite a large part, have had De Bruyne out for half the season last year. Arsenal didn't really struggle with that, but this is a struggle now. No Rice, of course, through the sort of controversial suspension, and no Odegaard, which is sort of the biggest miss, I would say. I think they were probably, apart from Saka, maybe Arsenal's 2 best players last year, and they're coming into a game which means more, doesn't it? It's a derby. It's not the kind of game that you want to be going to without your best players, and I actually think that Arsenal might really, really struggle this week.
So I'm interested. Let's talk about his midfield situation, because Mikel Merino was obviously meant to come in to play on the left side. He's obviously still injured. Jorginho and Partey more than likely will start. But that third slot's interesting now, because we've got written down here Trossard. We were just talking off air about Havertz. We were talking about Timber. In terms of balance, how do they get that right?
Well, that's why managers like Arteta, managers like Pep Guardiola, and I'm not comparing Arteta to Guardiola, by the way, but that's why they buy multifunctional players. Kai Havertz can play in a multitude of positions. He can drop into the midfield there. That's what they bought him to do initially, and they figured out that he's actually better up top as a faux or false number 9. You can play Timber in the midfield as well, but you can also play left back and right back and centre back, and so they've got loads of options. I don't know if those options are solutions though. I don't know if they necessarily have that balance in the team if you move around that midfield. Like you say, Partey and Jorginho should start. There's a reason why Jorginho doesn't start for Arsenal week in, week out. He's great in moments, he's great at dictating tempo, but he's not a player that can deal with the physicality of the Premier League week in, week out. Partey might be able to help him out in this game, but it's an Arsenal team, I feel, bring Havertz into midfield. I think you play either Trossard or Martinelli down the middle. Depending on if you start Raheem Sterling on the left-hand side. And so they've got options. I don't think there's like I said, I don't think that these are solutions. I think that they're weakened as a result of Rice and Odegaard being missing. But as a result of them having multifunctional players, they should be able to cope with it.
See, I hear the Havertz shout, but I think the net negative of getting rid of Havertz as the focal point, because that's essentially how they play now. He's the focal point.
Yeah.
And in this sort of game, they will occasionally want to go direct. They will want to punch it into his feet so he can hold it up, especially when you're missing Odegaard in midfield. And that's where I kind of go. I think you, like, by playing him in midfield, are you potentially losing more by getting rid of him? And I personally think the solution probably is Timber in midfield, but then it's really negative. But then Zinchenko at left back just feels more normal, more natural.
I think if you go with that and you go with Jorginho, Partey and Timber in midfield, it's kind of like you're going for the draw, really. That's too negative and it's too defensive. It's really, really difficult to see what they're going to do. And it's kind of crazy that we're talking about this. These are title contenders. They've lost 1 player to suspension for a game. They've lost 1 to injury for maybe 1 or 2 games. And we're sat here like over-analysing what the team is going to be. And it's all like square pegs in round holes. Like, maybe Arsenal haven't done the correct transfer business over the last couple of seasons, because this is a fantastic 11 when everyone's fit, but this is only 2 players that are out. It's not like a huge injury crisis. It's just 2 quite important players. And we're now looking at this 11, kind of not really knowing how they're going to line up.
But it's against the backdrop of City's dominance. I think in any other era, like this kind of works, and Arsenal can kind of see it through and tread water until these players return. But you compare it to Man City, who lost Kevin De Bruyne for the last part of last season, lost Erling Haaland, and they still didn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
Whereas this Arsenal team, they're predicated on their star players being available, and they were available last year. Rice and Odegaard, I think when everybody's fit, Rice, Odegaard and Partey make up a very, very strong midfield. You're missing 2 of those 3, and so it's going to be a problem for Arsenal. And I think the only reason why Arsenal fans are so pessimistic going into it is that they know if they drop points in this game, they're even further behind Man City, which is crucial at this stage, because City are normally slow starters in the title race. Starting off quickly this year already, 3 wins out of 3, Arsenal dropping points against Brighton. If Arsenal drop points against Spurs, the team that they've done very well against away from home in recent seasons, then they know that could be the title already.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I don't think we'd be analysing this if, no disrespect, they were playing Ipswich at home followed by Southampton at home. They've got Spurs away and then they've got to go to the Etihad.
Yeah.
If they lose both of those games, City will be 8 points clear, most likely if City beat Brentford, and that is a huge amount to overcome this early on in the season.
That's where I think the backdrop also is Spurs, because Spurs are in my opinion, they've actually been fascinating to watch this season. And I think this is a bit of a yin and yang. I think Arsenal have been fairly boring. We were criticised last week where we said that, but it turns out a lot of people kind of agree. And then I think Spurs have been exciting, but really unlucky against Leicester. They dominated the first half. Should have been 3-4-0 up. Then they battered Everton, and then I thought against Newcastle, they sort of unravelled a little bit. But those 3 games for me epitomise Ange's Spurs. I think that's what you're going to get. And now there's no Mickey van der Ven, so they haven't got pace at the back, so Dragushin and Romero with that high line. Long day.
It will be a long day, or can be a long day. The thing about Spurs and what they need to overcome in this North London derby is that for the longest time, 3, 4, 5 seasons when Pochettino was at the helm, they had Arsenal's number. For the last 2 or 3 seasons, Arsenal have gone to Spurs Stadium and got the result. Last year, they won 3-2 after being 3-0 up. That game could have been even more than that. They got the win the year before. And if you look at the previous 17 fixtures at White Hart Lane or Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Arsenal only got 2 wins in 17 fixtures, which speaks to the shift in North London. And Arsenal are now asserting their dominance. I think for Spurs, this is more of a mental block in terms of getting over Arsenal, getting over what is a juggernaut. Arsenal are a very, very good team. The amount of points they've accumulated over the last 2 seasons in a different era would win them a league title or 2. But for Spurs, they need to overcome their biggest rivals who have got better players than them, that are playing better football than them right now. But there's an opportunity here for Tottenham. Arsenal missing key players. If Spurs can go and get a win in this game, all of a sudden the start of the season looks a little bit better. Everyone knows they should have beaten Leicester. Yeah. They beat Everton convincingly, and then they lost to Newcastle in the game that could have gone either way. But if they get a win against Arsenal at home, it changes the whole complexion of the season.
It's funny actually because we're talking about midfield. I just looked at their 3 midfielders and I'm going Basuma, Kulusevski, and Maddison are so attacking, so front-footed, and on their day, if you put them 2 midfielders alongside each other, Partey, Jorginho, either Trossard, Havertz, whoever we choose to put in there, Maddison, Basuma, and Kulusevski, they're going to win that battle in midfield. Yeah. And that's where Arsenal actually asserted a lot of their dominance because their back four is so well protected. I think this now opens another door to this back line now being more exposed and then potentially seeing a Spurs side really assert their dominance going forward and Arsenal having to play a different style potentially.
Yeah, and I think what you said before about how exciting Spurs have been, they have been that, and they've been that ever since Ange stepped foot in the door. But the one thing that they've done in the last 3 games that they did the whole of last season is this defensive frailty and is this lack of willing to change for Ange. You mentioned like getting over the hurdle of Arsenal. The hurdle that they really need to get over is their own hurdle. Mm-hmm. They're like, Ange's reluctance to change the style, particularly at the back, just means that those 4 at the back are just, it's like an attack versus defence exercise in a lot of the big games. Mm-hmm. You saw it against Liverpool last year, against Arsenal last year. Those 4 players have no protection at all. And you're looking at that, as you mentioned, that midfield, Basuma, Maddison and Kulusevski. It's too attacking. It's too attacking. And yes, they might get off to a really good start and they might, play their beautiful football as we know they can play and score a few goals, but they are very, very, very vulnerable at the back. And without Mickey van der Ven with the pace to kind of get back, they can really, really get hurt.
I feel like, of course, Van der Ven's not on our sheet right now in terms of starting, but I think there's a chance he does play. I think there's a chance that he does play. I think that he's integral to what they do. I think Dragusin came in with a lot of hype, but hasn't really found his feet yet at Spurs. And I think with Romero partner in Dragusin, that would be a huge problem for Spurs. So they do need Mickey van der Ven to be fit, but similar to both these sides in the position they're at right now, predicated on individuals, and that's the difference between maybe Man City and a side like Arsenal or Spurs. They need individuals to be fit for them to play the football that they need to play. And like you mentioned, Ange is unwilling to change philosophy, which I admire to an extent, but when they get found out, they get found out big. And in the game against Newcastle, before the international break, they could have won that game. They should have won. They should have beaten Leicester as well. So, and you're going to get that from a zoomed out perspective. Ange's done a very good job. But I was talking to one of the producers, Tom, about Spurs. He's a Tottenham fan. And I said, has the tide kind of changed in terms of the narrative behind Ange? I remember back in the last season where Spurs wanted to lose against City because they didn't want to give the title to Arsenal. Ange came out and criticised the Spurs fans for the mentality. And in my view, or my perception of it as an outsider, it's never been the same in terms of connectivity between the manager and the fans. And I feel like I'm hearing murmurs of discontent among Tottenham fans. If they get turned over at home against Arsenal, that'll start to get louder.
It's also the problem for them in this game is people, including us three, currently are making it sound like Spurs should win this game. Spurs don't often go into this game feeling like they should win. And with all the pressure on Ange, and I think there's generally just a little bit of frustration with what you said and also what Kweku just said there, like this reluctance to change, and he never has actually, to be fair. When he was at Celtic, they had a similar problem as well. I think that then leads perfectly into trying to predict this game, because on one end we're going Arsenal's midfield are depleted, they've got big injuries, and then we're going Spurs, they're not right either. Who's winning this?
Oh, it's so difficult. I mean, we were saying when we were walking in, I think we'll discuss it later in terms of what's the bigger derby in Britain, whatever. I think this North London derby is always the most exciting.
Yeah.
There's always packed full of goals. The fans, you can tell, really hate each other. The players seem to really hate each other, particularly the English ones as well. So I think it's going to be a really good game. It'll definitely be high scoring, because I think Spurs' attack on its day is too good to quell, and I think Spurs' defence is probably too poor to keep a clean sheet against Martinelli, Havertz, Saka.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 3-2 to Spurs. I do think they will win the game. Yeah.
Okay. We've got down on our sheet Maddison, Kulusevski, Basuma. I just think that they'd be insane to go into the game with that midfield. I think you bring in.
Go with it,
I think
brave.
you bring in Pape Sarr. You let Basuma and Sarr sit. You play Maddison in the 10. You provide that protection to the centre backs, and you dominate the midfield physically, because that Arsenal midfield is there to be dominated without Rice in there, who's got incredible physicality. I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to sit on the fence. I think it's going to be an exciting game, but I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
I thought 2-2 as well. I don't think you can drop Kulusevski. I've got it written in front of me. 8.04 shot creating actions per 90. He's Tottenham's main creator, and I think he's actually been the difference in midfield. I think Ange will attack. I just have this feeling he's going to go, their midfield's depleted, let's get at them. That might invite them to concede goals, and they always do. But I also think it'll be 2-2. I can't see Arsenal winning at all. I don't know why. But equally, what's
crazy?
Arsenal going to win?
It's a crazy thing to say, isn't it?
I just have a feeling I'll go 2-2.